Good morning. Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org. This morning I'm going to be talking about stomach acid, so specifically low stomach acid or low stomach acid production. For many of us who have GERD or GERD-related symptoms, we have this preconceived notion that our symptoms are a result of too much stomach acid or high stomach acid, a lot of stomach acid, and that's simply, it's not the case. I think it's something that's kind of got stuck in our mind from commercials we've seen on TV for different heartburn medications. And so, first of all, let's just clear that up. So when you have reflux, when you have, acid reflux or heartburn, or any of the other symptoms that are related to GERD or LPR, it's not because you have too much stomach acid. It's because stomach acid is getting out of the stomach. It's because stomach acid is coming out of the stomach and into the esophagus and burning the esophagus or other tissues up higher in the esophagus, the throat, sometimes the sinuses. So it's not that we have too much stomach acid, it's just that it's escaping. It's escaping from the stomach and getting into places where it's not supposed to be. And so in today's video I'm going to be talking about hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid production. So hypo meaning low, chlorhydria, hydrochloric acid. So this is a condition where the body is not producing enough hydrochloric acid in the gut to fully digest your food and give the body the ability to fully absorb the nutrients in the food. So before I really get into this, I just want to remind you that I would love it if you would share this video out to anyone that you know who has GERD or hiatal hernia or LPR or other gastric conditions. I would really appreciate that. And if you want to follow me here on Facebook, this month I'm coming on live several days a week to talk about different gastric issues, because I have a hiatal hernia, at least I had a hiatal hernia, and GERD, and I was able to reverse my condition naturally. And so I'm sharing everything that I have learned, everything that I have done to holistically support that healing. So Tammy Burkhalter says, I used Pepcid AC for many years. Is it possible that the Pepcid AC can damage your stomach or esophagus? Tammy, I'm assuming when you say Pepcid, I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not sure what Pepcid AC is. Is that an over-the-counter heartburn remedy? Or is that a prescription? I think it's an over-the-counter heartburn remedy, but if that's a prescription PPI, I need to clear up what that is before I can answer that question. So, so low stomach acid. So here's some of the reasons that your body can produce low stomach acid. If you look this up on a conventional website, it'll say, as we're aging, that can be one reason. It's an over-the-counter. Okay, so yeah, Pepcid AC. So she says she used Pepcid AC for many years, and she wants to know if it's possible that it can damage your stomach or esophagus. I don't have a really thorough answer for that, but in general, many of these over-the-counter medications that will reduce the production or calm the production of stomach acid will limit your body's ability to absorb nutrients, and that's the main thing that I want to talk about today. And so what happens if your body's unable to absorb nutrients? Well, a lot of bad things can happen, because if we have deficiencies, then our body's not going to be able to work optimally, right, in many different ways. So it's important that our body is able to absorb that nutrition. So when we take a pill or a drug that reduces our stomach acid, that's, we can have a lot of different negative outcomes. So can that then damage your stomach or esophagus? Well, this cyclical thing begins to happen when we purposefully reduce our stomach acid. And I'm not here to tell anyone to stop taking your pills or your drugs. You may be taking them for a very important reason. You may need them. Okay, so but what the cyclical thing that happens is, we have symptoms like heartburn. We take a pill to reduce our stomach acid. We begin to have vitamin deficiencies, mineral deficiencies, and then we begin to have things like, if we have mineral deficiencies, we can be at higher risk for osteoporosis. all you have to do is go on the internet and look up the drug that you're taking and see all the possible risks and side effects, and those are generally going to be because your body is not able to absorb nutrients when we take these pills. Okay, so then again in that cycle, you know, she's asking, can it damage your stomach or esophagus? Well, damage to your stomach and your esophagus occurs because of, one, poor diet. Okay, and then because of a poor diet, we can have things like bloating, we can have things like constipation, we can have things like inflammation. Okay, all of these are going to injure your stomach, and then when it comes to injury to the esophagus, that's when that acid starts to come up. Okay, so that's when the lower esophageal sphincter is not able to clamp down tight and keep the contents in the stomach, and then the acid is coming up. So you know, it's really, if you're lower esophageal, if you're having any type of reflux and having burning in any part of the esophagus, then it is really important that you address this, because we don't want to have burning in the esophagus. The esophagus can become inflamed over time, esophagitis, inflammation of the esophagus. That can put you at higher risk for Barrett's disease, and that can put you at higher risk for esophageal cancer. So we do want to address any burning in the esophagus, and burning in the gut as well. You know, if you have ulcers, these are things we do want to address, and sometimes you have to do that with prescription drugs in order to get that burning off of those tissues and to let the healing occur. So again, I'm not here to tell anyone to stop taking their drugs. You really just need to look at this very holistically. It starts with nutrition. It starts with nutrition. And from there, you know, what I teach is how we can manually move our stomach down, so that if we do have that stomach pushing up and putting pressure on that lower esophageal sphincter, if that's all you have, it's a pretty easy fix by, you know, relaxing the belly, doing some gentle manipulation exercises, and really practicing your breathing. If you have a hiatal hernia, on the other hand, where your stomach is lodged up into the diaphragm, that can take more time and support to get that stomach down and out of that position. But all of that pressure is putting pressure on that lower esophageal sphincter, and that is going to cause it to open up. The pressure, the inflammation, all of these things can affect that valve and cause it to not be able to clamp down tight. Okay, so, but today's video is specifically about stomach acid and how that can affect that lower esophageal sphincter. And that's what I want to talk about. So, your lower esophageal sphincter, where your esophagus meets your stomach, there's a valve there, and it opens up when the food comes into the stomach, and then it clamps down tight so that nothing can come back into the esophagus. That's the job of the lower esophageal sphincter. So in the presence of very strong stomach acid, that lower esophageal sphincter will clamp down tighter and tighter. Okay, I want to say that one more time. In the presence of very strong stomach acid in your stomach, your lower esophageal sphincter will clamp down tight so that that acid can't reflux up into the esophagus. So here where the sphincter is, it will clamp down tight when there's lots of strong hydrochloric acid present in the stomach. Okay? So then why do we have reflux if that's the case? Well, for many people, and this doesn't apply to everyone, but all you have to do is go on YouTube and look up low stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, betaine, you know, any of these types of things, and heartburn, and see what people are saying. Hear what people's stories about how they took a hydrochloric acid supplement and it got rid of their reflux. Okay, so I'm not telling you to try this. I'm going to tell you how it works, and I'm going to tell you what I did. Okay, but keep in mind, if you're wondering, I am not a doctor. So these are just things that I've learned in my own experience and things that I've tried. And you can certainly go, again, on Google and hear other people's stories about how they have tried this and it has worked. So I just want to talk a little bit about why it works. So again, if you have the presence of strong stomach acid in your stomach, that speaks to the lower esophageal sphincter, and it clamps down tight in the presence of that strong stomach acid. So as we get older, that's one thing that can happen. We get older, we produce less stomach acid. Stress is hugely effective on your body's ability to produce stomach acid. So if you're under a lot of stress a lot of the time and you are unable to effectively manage your stress, that is going to have a big impact on your body's ability to produce adequate stomach acid. So I've talked a little bit about this already, and how your vagus nerve, which is a nerve that starts in the brainstem and comes down, and it's connected to very much of our anatomy. It's called the wandering nerve because it's connected to many of our organs. And it is responsible, one of its many responsibilities is the production of stomach acid. And so if we're under stress a lot, and if we're not very good at managing our stress, what happens is the body upregulates what's known as the sympathetic nervous system. And that's when the body is going to divert all of its auxiliary power to life-saving mechanisms. And it's going to really slow down things that are less important to survival, like digestion, okay, metabolism. All right, so it's really important that we have healthy vagus nerve function. And one way to do that is to effectively manage our stress. And one way to do that is through a daily meditative breathing practice where we slow the breath and we relax our muscles. And what this is known to do is improve what's called vagal tone, which just means it's helping your vagus nerve to perform more optimally, which means it's going to be better able to produce lots of stomach acid, which is what we want, So that's one thing, is really taking a look at your stress levels. Most of us know that, yeah, we're under too much stress. I mean, if you live in this, I mean, it's just a given. I mean, a lot of us we deal with a lot of stress, even if not in our own lives, just with everything that's going on in the world. You know, if you watch the news, if you tune into Facebook, any of that, that stress does affect you. It causes your muscles to tighten, it causes your breath to become more shallow, and it causes your body to upregulate what's known as the sympathetic nervous system, which puts you into a state of what we call fight or flight, okay? Even drinking a lot of coffee upregulates the sympathetic nervous system and puts you into a state, you know, somewhat of a state of fight or flight. And again, in that state, the body diverts auxiliary power to life-saving mechanisms and ignores things like digestion, absorption, metabolism, okay? So, you know, if you're really stuck and you're trying to lose weight and you know you have a lot of stress and you're not managing it appropriately, this could be one thing to look at. Your body is constantly in a state of upregulating the sympathetic nervous system instead of the parasympathetic nervous system. That's where the body, you know, sends auxiliary power. I say auxiliary power because it's a Star Trek reference to things like absorption and digestion and metabolism. So we want these things working effectively, right? We want our immune function to be working effectively. We want absorption of minerals and vitamins to be working optimally. Okay, that's done in a state of rest. That's done when the body says, okay, all is well, there's no emergency here, everything's good to go. We can now focus on absorption and digestion and rest and metabolism and these things. So, stress, take a look at your stress and understand that. So a breathing practice, you know, things like yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, these are all really good to help begin to practice slowing down, relaxing the muscles, slowing the breath, okay, and that's going to improve that vagal tone. Another thing you can try to improve vagal tone, and I don't know if this works, but I think it feels really good, is washing your face with cold water. And the reason that this works is because that vagus nerve also comes it comes all the way out to the surface of your face. And so by splashing, again, I don't know how this works, but by splashing cold water on the face, this can help improve your vagal tone. And I know when I start to get a bit of a stress headache because of stress or a tension headache, if I go in and splash cold water on my face, I started trying this recently, and it really does. I can just like feel it as my face is in the sink, just holding that cold water on my face. I can feel that tension headache begin to just wash away. I can feel it just begin to wash away. So that's something you can try as well, but don't just try it once. Do it as a practice. Like start washing your face with cold water every day, or even better yet, a cold shower, which I'm not into. I've tried it. I just can't do it. Or even better yet, cold plunging. So, you know, plunging the whole body into cold water, you know, for 5 or 10 seconds and then getting out. So these are things that you can consider. Gosh, you guys, all these great comments, and my scroller is not working. Okay, Lickle Lulu, I will get to your comment later. Anytime I see a see more button there, I'll get to it later, and I will respond to it later in the day when I come back and read your comments. Okay, so stress is one thing you can look at. So another thing when it comes to hydrochloric acid production is your diet. And typically if you go to any conventional websites like your Mayo Clinic and your WebMD, they're not going to talk about this, at least not very much. And the reason for that, well, I'm not going to get into the reason, but let's just talk about diet when it comes to hydrochloric acid production. So if you're eating a diet, what I call the typical or standard American diet, where you're eating, you know, just a lot of foods that include meat, dairy, and eggs, a lot of foods that includes, you know, like your typical junk foods that are high in, you know, processed oils, processed sugars, processed soys, a lot of salt. When those foods go into the stomach, they require a lot more of the body in order to break that up and digest those types of foods. You know, when you're talking about meat, dairy, and eggs, they go through the body. I mean, we know this. They go through the body much slower. They take longer to break down and to digest. And so as we get older and the body starts to produce less stomach acid, but we continue to put these foods in that require more work of the digestive system, there's just an imbalance. There's an imbalance where you're putting in foods that require a lot of stomach acid, and you don't have enough to keep up with that. And so then what happens? You have slowed digestion, okay? And when we have slowed digestion, things back up. We have things like fermentation and putrefaction, which means we have bloating, stomach pains, stomach cramps, and then we get things like constipation or diarrhea or a combination of both. So all of these different gastric issues can start from simply that slowed digestion, food staying in the digestive tract for much longer than it should be. Food is actually meant to move through pretty quickly. And when you're on a whole foods plant-based diet, it moves through pretty quickly. But as soon as you put foods in that require, you know, a lot more enzymes, a lot more stomach acid in order to break that food down, then it's going to slow all of that down. And then if that food is not getting fully broken down, then what happens? Then you've got, when you have a stomach full of food and it's trying to digest that food and then it moves into the small intestine, it's supposed to be, you know, a bit of a puree by that point, you know, broken down from chewing it and then the acid breaking it down. It goes into the small intestine to be further broken down and, you know, into the digestive tract to be, you know, absorbed. And if you still got whole chunks of food going through that digestive tract, not only is that going to slow things down, that's going to cause injury to the intestines. That's going to cause, again, a lot of bloating, because when that food sits around in the intestines, then the bacteria in there they begin to eat those, you know, that food that's not fully digested, and then a byproduct of that is a lot of gas. So then you have, you know, distended, you know, intestines and bloating in the stomach. Things can back up into places they're not supposed to be. So your stomach connects to the small intestine, your small intestine connects to the large intestine, and each of these environments are very different, and they each have very different bacterial colonies in them. And so then if you start to have bacteria in the large intestine back up into the small intestine, that can cause a lot of issues, and then back up into the stomach as well. So, you know, we have valves. We have a lot of valves. You know, we have a valve here. We have a valve up here at the top of the esophagus. We have a valve at the bottom of the esophagus. We have the valve where the small intestine meets the large intestine. We have all of these valves, and they're one-way valves where things are supposed to move one way. But when we have inflammation and things start to back up, then we get all of these problems. We get bloating, cramping, constipation, diarrhea, all of the problems that we have with these gastric conditions. So you really can't talk about these issues of the digestive tract without talking about diet. Really, really important. So Nadia says, if I take a deep breath, I can feel a pinch on my left side coming from my hiatal hernia. Yep. And that can be really uncomfortable. I'm going to grab a towel. I am not going to have time to change my clothes if this pops. So Nadia, we'll just take a little sidetrack here. Most of us, our hiatal hernia is here on the left side, just under the rib cage. It can be kind of over to the side. It can be closer to the middle. For everybody, it's different. She says she feels a pinch on her left side coming when she takes a deep breath. So when we take a deep breath, if we have a hiatal hernia, your stomach is stuck. So if this is your stomach and your diaphragm is here, it's stuck here in your diaphragm instead of down here under the diaphragm where it belongs. So when we take a deep breath, the diaphragm raises up and the stomach is stuck in there. And so it's going to take that stomach with it to an extent, but also to an extent it's going to try to separate a little bit. So it's, as the diaphragm raises up, when you take, when you take a deep breath, the diaphragm is going to come down and it's going to bring the stomach down. But then when you exhale, this diaphragm is going to rise up. So when you take that deep breath and the diaphragm begins to try to separate from that stomach, you probably have some tender tissues right here because they're getting squeezed by your diaphragm. They're not supposed to. Your stomach's not meant to have a belt around it like this. It's meant to hang out down here and be able to really fully stretch, you know, when there's food in there. And so because those tissues are tender, and when you exhale and that diaphragm comes up and tries to create that separation, yeah, that can be painful. I'll never forget the day that I fully dislodged my hernia. I was in so much pain all day long with every breath. And then, you know, I'm going to tell you what I did to fully dislodge that. And I'm not saying this is what you guys should do. For some people, this can cause a lot more pain depending on your hernia. But for me, I started trying some different yoga poses, and it was just making it worse and worse and worse. And I just lifted my hands up above my head and took a really long stretch, and that pulls the diaphragm up. And I really relaxed my belly, which allows the stomach to move down. Now, mind you, I'd been working on these exercises for several weeks at this point, breaking up that peritoneum, moving that stomach down, training myself to relax the belly and open up the abdomen so that the organs, the abdominal organs, have room to move down again. So the day that I did this and fully dislodged my hernia, I'd done a lot of work up to that point. So anytime you raise your hands or take a deep breath, that puts a lot of pain on your hernia, you know, you're not ready yet. You can try it, but you might not be ready yet. Good morning. You also feel a soreness in the hiatal hernia just by sitting. Well, again, Nadia, when you're sitting, you know, whether you're slouching or you're sitting up straight, if you're slouching, all of that pressure is putting pressure on your hernia. If you're sitting up straight, the diaphragm is lifting and pulling, trying to create separation of that hernia. So either one of those can cause tenderness and pain. I mean, it's perfectly normal. So my best suggestion to you, Nadia, would be obviously one, to watch what you're eating, but also oh, cool, you just bought the carb solution. Oh, is it the carb solution or the starch solution? Probably the starch solution, same thing. But yeah, good, you're working on it. That's good. It takes time. It takes time, Nadia, so don't give up. Hopefully you've gotten a little bit of relief. Give me a heart if you have. Hopefully you've gotten a little bit of relief from your symptoms. But it takes time to get that stomach to move down and out, and by eating a healthy plant-based diet, that's going to really help support your healing. Okay, so I got to check the clock here. All right, we're all right. So my comments aren't scrolling this morning for some reason, so just give me a second. Okay, so yeah, so there's a couple things you can do when it comes to hydrochloric acid production and testing whether or not you have low stomach acid. So what I found in just reading different people's stories is that a lot of people have been able to remedy their reflux. Now remember, with hiatal hernia and GERD, there's a wide array of symptoms, but for reflux specifically, a lot of people have said simply by supplementing with hydrochloric acid, they got rid of their reflux. They got rid of their reflux. And so again, if you supplement with hydrochloric acid, you're building up that acid in your stomach once again. As we get older, if we just begin to produce less stomach acid, the idea is if we supplement that with a pill, hydrochloric acid supplementation, that will boost our body's ability to be able to produce enough hydrochloric acid on its own, and then you won't need to take this long term. That is the hypothesis. So what I've found is that many people are able to eliminate their reflux by hydrochloric acid supplementation. Keep in mind, if you have low stomach acid, besides the fact that you can have vitamin mineral deficiencies because you're not able to fully digest your food, that hydrochloric acid is also really important for general immunity. It will kill off any viruses or unbeneficial or dangerous bacteria or parasites that are lurking around in there as well. Okay, so a couple of things that you can do to test and find out whether or not you have low stomach acid. There is a test. There is a medical test that can be done if you want to go in and talk to your naturopath or your doctor and say, you know, I'd like to find out where I'm at on my stomach acid production. That's one way. There is a home test that you can do. You mix a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda into about 5 ounces of cold water in the morning on an empty stomach. You drink it and you set a timer and you wait 5 minutes. And what you're looking for during that 5 minutes is you're looking for whether or not you can burp during that 5 minutes. If it takes you, 2 to 3 minutes before you burp, or if it takes you a full 5 minutes before you burp, or if you don't burp at all, that's an indication that you have very low stomach acid, because when your stomach acid mixes with the baking soda, that creates gas, and so that's going to rise up in the form of a burp. Now, this is really important though. For those of us with hiatal hernia, not all of us, but many of us have what's known as persistent or chronic belching as a symptom of our hiatal hernia. And that can be, and I'm going to do a whole video on this, and I did it in my private group, talking about just the laws of nature. There's a law called Boyle's Law, and when you apply that to breathing, it causes the lungs to expand and deflate. But that same law can also be applied to that little bitty part of your stomach that is now up in your chest cavity. So the same laws that apply to your lungs are now applying to this little guy right here, which means it's going to fill up with air and cause that to stretch and cause that to put pressure on your lower esophageal sphincter and cause you to belch a lot. So if you're a chronic belcher, this test isn't going to mean anything, because you're going to drink the baking soda and you're going to burp, because you burp probably all the time anyway. So this is something to take into consideration. For some of you, you might want to try this to test your stomach acid. What I did was I went ahead and I went onto Amazon and I researched all of the different hydrochloric acid supplements, and I ended up purchasing one, and I think I have the empty bottle right over here somewhere. I do. This is the one that I got. Again, this is all going to be reversed, but this is called Premier HCl. I got it on Amazon. It wasn't very expensive. I can't remember how much it cost, but this is the one I got because it's a vegan option. Typically, these hydrochloric acid supplements will also have pepsin in them, which makes them not a vegan option, and I'm vegan. So that's what I did. I just bought these, and it says to take 1 tablet or 1 capsule after each meal. Okay, so what I did is at dinner time, which was my biggest and most diverse meal of the day, I would take 1 of those. And what you're looking for when you take this, if you're just trying to test your stomach acid production, is you're looking for a burning sensation in the stomach. So it doesn't feel like heartburn. It's just a mild burning sensation in the stomach. So this is how this goes. This is how you test. This is how I tested my stomach acid. I took 1 of these on day 1 with my biggest meal, and I waited to see if I experienced any burning in my stomach, and I didn't. So the next day I took 2 of these with my largest meal, and I waited to see if I felt any burning sensation in my stomach, and I didn't. So you kind of get the idea. On day 5, I was up to 5 of these capsules before I felt any burning sensation in my stomach. And when I felt it, I knew it. And then over the course of the next half hour or so, I drank lots of water to kind of try to dilute that, because it was uncomfortable. It wasn't super painful. It wasn't like, I'm going to die. But I could feel it, and it was a burning sensation. It was uncomfortable because I had too much stomach acid in my stomach. So the reason you increase your dose every day if you're not feeling that burn is because you're trying to find your dose. So once I got up to 5, I knew then my dose was 4. So I started taking 4 of these tablets every day with my largest meal, and I didn't experience any burning. And I did that until the bottle was gone, and then I just stopped. And then I just stopped. So my experience, the reason I continued to take these until they were gone is because my experience was they really made my stomach feel just good and normal. So for me, when I started doing this, I was still experiencing, even though I was on a plant-based diet, I was still experiencing occasional bloating. I was still experiencing occasional discomfort and indigestion with certain trigger foods. Okay, so I found that with this, I was able to eat pretty much whatever I wanted, even a cup of coffee after a meal, and I was fine. I was perfectly fine. Now, does this reverse a hiatal hernia? No. But for some people have hiatal hernia and they don't have any symptoms. Some people have, you know, just GERD and no hiatal hernia and they have symptoms. Everybody's going to be different. So this is something you can investigate. This is something you can play around with. You can certainly talk to your doctor about this. I would, you know, a naturopath I think is best. I was just reading a comment this morning on somebody else's YouTube channel who was talking about hydrochloric acid supplementation, and she said, you know, I went to my doctor and I talked about maybe testing for low stomach acid, and my doctor didn't even know what that was. So I don't think that this is really something that they put a lot of emphasis on in med school. I think when it comes to gastric conditions, if you come to your doctor and you say, Doc, I've got heartburn, it's really, really bothering me, they're going to write you a prescription for a particular medication that they've been taught to give to people who have heartburn. That's what their training has been. But if you go to a naturopath, on the other hand, they know about this stuff. And, you know, they can monitor you, they can put you on a supplement and see if that helps. Now, listen up, because this is really important. This is really important. If you have or you suspect you have stomach acid or stomach ulcers, you don't want to supplement with hydrochloric acid, because that acid is what is giving you the ulcer in the first place. Well, it's not giving you most stomach ulcers are a result of what's known as H. pylori. A lot of you have heard of that. It's a bacterial overgrowth or infection in the stomach. H. pylori is known as the Helicobacter bacteria, and it will invade into the mucous membrane of your stomach. It will drill holes. It's like a little spiral. If you ever look at it under the microscope, it looks like a little spiral, and it will burrow into the mucous membrane of your stomach to protect itself from the stomach acid in the stomach, and it will make its home there in that lining of your stomach. And because that H. pylori has now created its home in that mucous membrane of your stomach lining, that's what begins to break down that mucus and create a weakness in your stomach lining. And so now that acid can reach your actual stomach and burn a hole in the tissues that aren't protected by the mucous membrane. Love you. So yeah, if you have stomach ulcers, or if you suspect you have stomach ulcers, you don't want to add more acid to the mix. You want to address your stomach ulcers and heal those first. And that's why, you know, I think it's really great to work with a naturopath, because they can help you. They can help you heal your stomach ulcers, help you, you know, with your diet, and help you begin to address issues of low stomach acid production if that's the case for you. Now, is this the case for everybody? No, obviously not. But, you know, the more I read about this, the more the consensus or the hypothesis seems to be from other professionals in the field is that, you know, a lot of these naturopaths that work with patients who have GERD, who have reflux, they put them on this supplementation and it takes care of the problem. And again, you don't have to take them forever, because it stimulates your own body's ability to produce more stomach acid. So for some people, they might have to take a course of it and then, you know, maybe come back and do another course 6 months or a year later to boost that production again. But it's not like you have to take it forever, which is nice. And the other nice thing is, maybe a month ago or so, I decided to take one tablet just to test my own stomach acid production and see how I was doing. Now remember, back a couple years ago when I first started this, I had to take 5 tablets before I felt any burning. About a month ago, I took 1 tablet and I felt the burn. And that tells me that I have plenty of stomach acid in my stomach because I added in that acid and I felt the burn. So I hope this has been helpful. I know this is a really kind of a confusing subject because a lot of us, again, we have this preconceived notion that reflux is a result of too much stomach acid. So it's not a result of too much stomach acid, it's a result of that acid leaking out through an LES, a lower esophageal sphincter, that's not fully clamping down. And so it wants to clamp down in the presence of strong stomach acid. So for some people, simply by supplementing, that can create that, you know, effective clamping down of the lower esophageal sphincter. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up. I hope you guys have a really wonderful and beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow morning.